When the sun has set on a Friday night, bringing peace into your home, families will gather all around singing Shabbat, Shalom. Everybody sing Shalom, Shalom. Shalom, shalom. It's a gift from God to put a smile upon your face. He's got the whole world in his hands, so obey his commands and you will know peace. Shalom, shalom. Shabbat shalom, shalom.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'achem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sheichem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's been a while since Minnie has joined us for Shabbat, and we're so glad to be here with you to bring in not just any Shabbat, but the Shabbat that is the first Shabbat of the month of Adar. Now, what is significant about this month on the Jewish calendar? You might not even have noticed it because, here we are, kind of a third of the way into February, but on the Jewish calendar, Adar is the month of happiness and joy. The rabbi said, Mi shenichnas be'adar marbim simcha, that is, whoever enters the month of Adar should increase happiness, should bring joy. And it's really a mitzvah. And by the way, it's one of my favorite things about Judaism, because let's face it, how many cultures in the world have an entire month dedicated to making other people laugh and smile? And by the way, this Adar could not be timed any better, because I see a lot more smiles around the Jewish home lately. Everybody seems to be getting inoculated, vaccinated, that is, with the vaccine for COVID. People seem to be healing and healthy. People are spending time outside, enjoying the sun when they can. And it's like a new chapter has arrived, a chapter of hope and excitement. And from a Jewish point of view, Purim is now coming in just a couple of weeks. And so let's increase joy for each other. And try, by the way, to think of good jokes that you know. So I'm going to throw one to you, or maybe a couple. Are you ready? Okay. One day, a mother walks into her son's room, and he's sleeping. She wakes him up and says, "Young man, wake up. You have to go to Hebrew school." And her son says, Mom, I don't want to go to Hebrew school. I don't like going to temple. And she says, "Oh, come on. get going. It's important. Temple's very good. And the son says, Mom, I don't like going to temple. They don't like me there. I don't much like them there. And she says, I need you to get up right now, get dressed. You're going to temple, young man, right this second. And the young man says to the mom, give me one good reason why I should go to temple. And she says, I'll give you two good reasons. First of all, you're 43 years old. And secondly, you're the rabbi. Now, speaking of rabbis, okay, this is one of my favorite rabbi, priest, minister jokes because there are so many. All right, so a rabbi, a priest, and a minister are on a panel to discuss, when life begins, abortion and those kind of things. And so the moderator of the panel says, first to the Catholic priest, Father, as a Catholic leader, when do you think life begins? And the Catholic priest says, it's very clear. He doesn't even have to think about it. He says, very clear from the point of view of the Catholic Church, life begins at the moment of conception. As soon as the sperm enters the egg, you have a new human life. And so we forbid abortion completely. So the moderator turns to the minister and says, Reverend, what do you consider to be when life begins? And the minister says, well, from our point of view, life begins at the moment of viability. That is to say, once the fetus is old enough, mature enough to live outside of the womb, we're talking about, let's say, 32 weeks, something like that. At that point, we consider the fetus a human life, and we would never allow, for example, third trimester abortion for that reason. Well, then the moderator turns to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, from your point of view and your tradition's point of view, when does life begin? The rabbi ponders and thinks and looks around and says, when does life begin? When does life begin? Life begins when the children move out of the house and the dog dies. Uh-oh. I shouldn't have said that in front of Minnie. Luckily, she doesn't speak English. She only speaks roof roof. Anyway, these are the kind of silly things that we should do. And by the way, when Purim comes around, we're going to be wearing funny hats and funny glasses, and we're going to get everybody a mask. I can't wait to taste the Hamantaschen. By the way, it's time to think about what your favorite Hamantaschen flavor is. Mine is kind of obscure. My favorite flavor is cherry Hamantaschen. That's just me. Anyway, back to Shabbat. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam, chiri biri biri bim, bam bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom. I want to share another aspect of the month of Adar and Purim that people don't often think about, and that is a very serious side of Jewish humor. That sounds like an oxymoron, and it is. There is a serious side of Jewish humor. In fact, there is an entire genre of Jewish humor that deals with anti-Semitism. We know that even in the camps, our Jewish brothers and sisters were making jokes about Hitler, about the Nazis, and actually throughout Jewish history, humor has been used as a coping mechanism with regard to anti-Semitism. Not on every holiday, but certainly on this one. And so Haman, who is the villainous character in the story, is really the fool and is made the fool. But there's a serious undercurrent, which is that, why are we laughing at anti-Semitism? Because we can't just cry all the time. It's so serious that if we don't use humor to cope, where will we be? And I actually believe that one of the reasons that Jewish humor has become such an incredible genre of humor, why there are so many comic writers in Hollywood that are Jewish, why there were so many famous Jewish comedians, and you could list them just as I could, Joan Rivers, Jackie Mason, Don Rickles. I mean, so many of the leading comedians, both of the past and currently today, are Jewish. I really think it's in our DNA that partially because we've suffered so much persecution, we have found it that important to laugh, and even more important to make others laugh. So on this Purim and in this month of Adar, let's bring lots of joy and lots of humor to this Shabbat and the few Shabbatot to come that will still be in the month of Adar. Are you ready to go inside? I feel ready to go inside and make the blessings for this Shabbat that comes on the first of the new month of Adar. Come on in. And actually, while you're coming in, take a look at the sky. I'll give you a little glimpse at it. It's kind of gray and almost time. Come on inside. What do you think, Minnie? You want to go back down? I feel like I haven't lit the candles with you in a while. I can't wait. Here we go. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Shel Shabbat Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav b'mitzvotav V'tzivanu lehadlik ner V'tzivanu lehadlik ner V'tzivanu lehadlik ner Shel Shabbat Yom HaShishi v'yechu hashamayim ha'aretz v'chol tzva'am v'yechal Elohim b'yom hashi melachto asher asa v'yishbot b'yom hashi mekomoto asher asa v'yvarech Elohim et yom hashi v'yakadesh oto ki vo shavad mikomoto asher bara Elohim lasod Savrin Rabbanan v'Rabotai Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu V'shabbat kodsho be'avahu v'ratzon hinchilanu Zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit Ki hu yom techila lemikrahei kodesh Zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim Ki vanu v'acharta Ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim Ve'shabbat kodeshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch Atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Everyone, Amen. L'chaim, to life. Before we make motzi together, I want to make a little bit of a reflection on the Torah portion with you. Just a reminder, the Torah, which is really continual and isn't really divided up. If you open a Torah scroll, it's just words going on, was divided by our ancestors into Torah portions so that every week the Jewish people read a segment of the Torah, which is known as a parashah. The magic of that is that there's a kind of a Jewish pulse. As diverse as the Jewish people are, geographically, spiritually, by way of our different movements, all the different ways that we look at Judaism, the one thing that really unites us, aside from Shabbat itself, is the Torah portion. So this week's Torah portion, for all of the Jews all over the world, is called Mishpatim. And Mishpatim translates as rules. The Torah portion says, these are the rules, because, we teach rules to children. Sometimes we forget that adults need to be reminded to follow the rules as well. In fact, right now in Washington, some of our legislators are debating, to what extent are you allowed to break the rules without it being illegal or overly destructive. And that's in some ways the debate that's going on in Washington now. And in the Torah, there's a whole list of rules, a huge number. In fact, I just told a friend of mine recently that in Judaism, there are 613 mitzvot altogether. And that person said, what? I thought that there were 10 commandments. I said, well, there are the 10 commandments. Those are the big ones. But there are actually 613 altogether. About half of them are no longer applicable today because they had to do with the sacrifices in the ancient temple, and we don't do that anymore. But there are many, many mitzvot that are really important that are not included in the Ten Commandments, and a number of them appear in this week's Torah portion, which is filled with rules about how to be a good citizen. In some cases, it's what we would today call torts law. What happens if your neighbor's ox damages your property or vice versa? Or there's some sort of damage of some sort. But there are also rules about how to be Jewish. There are rules about the 3 pilgrimage festivals in this week's Torah portion. We have the reference that later leads to the separation of milk and meat, the rule that says don't cook a calf in its mother's milk. But the one rule, as it were, the one mishpat that stands out from this week's Torah portion for me is the one that says, don't oppress the stranger, because you know the heart of the stranger, for you were slaves in the land of Egypt. A wonderful reminder that we know what it means to be on the outside, to be the oppressed one, to be the one that is set aside. We know, as the Purim story shows us, what happens when there's anti-Semitism, and we don't want to stand by when there's any kind of hatred of any group, of any minority, including what the Torah calls strangers, what we would call immigrants, or even just people who are different from us in some way, who have an accent that is unfamiliar to us, who speak a language or have customs and norms that aren't the same as ours. This is a diverse world. The creator of the universe made us different on purpose. There are all these different languages and all these different tribes and all these different religions and all these different ethnicities. And that's a beautiful rainbow of God's creation and something to celebrate. And that's what we try to do as the Jewish people. And I hope that we always will. And I hope that we will never tolerate any kind of intolerance. We want to be embracing and loving of everybody. That is one of the most important messages of this week's Torah portion, Mishpatim. Okay, well, speaking of rules and customs, we have the custom of the lighting of the candles, which welcomes the Shabbat, and we already did that. We have the custom of the Kiddush, where we have wine or grape juice that symbolizes the sanctification or the holiness of this sacred day, this Shabbat of the beginning of the month of Adar. And finally, we have the challah. And the challah reminds us of many things, including the manna in the desert that our ancestors ate in double portion on Shabbat. So please join me in saying the motzi over the challah as we get ready to say Shabbat Shalom. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. A blessing upon each of your heads. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Yaher Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's light shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yisa Adonai, panav elecha, ve'yasem lecha shalom. May God gaze upon you and your loved ones and give you the blessing of shalom, of peace and wholeness. Ken Yi Ratzon, may it be God's will. Amen. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, Penei Shabbat, nekabla, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom Mevorach. From our home to your home, with love. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
When the sun has set on a Friday night, bringing peace into your home, families will gather all around singing Shabbat Shalom. Everybody sing Shalom, Shalom.